Welcome to Tales About the Table, where we explore the stories, challenges, and creative chaos of TTRPGs, but mostly D&D. I'm Elijah.
I'm Jack.
And I'm Josiah. Together, we discuss the art of DMing, character building, and making unforgettable moments at the table.
Each episode, we break down a different aspect of tabletop gaming, sharing our experiences, lessons learned, and maybe a few funny failures along the way. Whether you're a seasoned DM or you're just rolling your first set of dice, there's always more to learn about collaborative storytelling.
Sometimes we talk about how to play TTRPGs, the rules, the setup, and everything in between.
Sometimes we talk about how to be better people and communicators, and therefore, better players.
And sometimes we talk about our own misadventures and the lessons that we've learned from the worlds we've created.
But most importantly, we love telling great stories together.
So pull up a chair and join us as we share another of our many tales about the table. Hello, and welcome back to Tales About the Table. I'm Elijah, joined as always by my co-hosts Jack and Josiah. And today we're talking about something that I'm really excited to get into, and that is it's something we don't want to sound like we're gatekeeping at all, but we are going to be talking about the different types of D&D that you might be playing at your table. Dungeons and Dragons is a really cool game that people play a lot of different ways. And so right out the gate, we want to make sure that we're very clear. We are not saying that there's one correct way to play D&D, but we have a way that we prefer to play D&D. That doesn't mean all the time, however, that we get to play that exact type of D&D. Sometimes we join in, and we are at tables that don't necessarily play the same way that we always enjoy playing. And so today we really want to jump in, talk about that, talk about what it's like to experience that and what it's like to help others to still have a good experience while playing a game that maybe they weren't hoping to play, or maybe you were wanting something else out of it that they ended up getting instead. And so I think to start, we really want to jump in and talk about, hey, what type of D&D are you trying to play? Obviously, there's a lot of different types that you could be playing. Maybe you want to play a casual game where you just pick it up. Maybe you're trying to tell some grand epic story. Maybe you really just want to do combat, and that's all that you really care about in D&D. Just do combat. Awesome, no worries there. So, whatever that may be. I think we'll open up with, how do you identify the type of D&D that you are trying to play?
Yeah, I really like that question too, specifically just because it is talking about, it isn't saying just what type of D&D are you playing, which I think is a valuable question, but it's identifying what type of D&D you want to be playing. And I think that really strikes at the heart of where this is a valuable conversation, because the truth of the matter is there's the difference between expectation and reality. And we sometimes say, oh, reality is all that matters. But in truth, it's our expectations of what is going to happen that often determine whether we're enjoying this or not. If there's this place where it's like, oh man, I came into this game expecting for this to be a bunch of veteran players that are serious about playing D&D, and we're all going to show up on time, we're all going to really get into a role play, we all know the mechanics, the game is going to be quick and snappy because we're all moving it forward rather quickly, and you start playing and it turns out that somebody invited a player who's never played D&D before, and the game is going to slow to a crawl whenever you're in combat because you got to teach this person all the new mechanics, and you're over there trying to get into character and role play, and everyone else is trying to cater to this new player, and they're cracking jokes, and there isn't a lot of verisimilitude, and you're not really paying attention to the game, and it's more about the humor and the comedy and the slapstick side of it, and you're like, I'm hating this group right now, I don't like what we're doing. And it's like, you don't like what we're doing not because that form of D&D is awful and no fun, but because you expected something else coming into this.
Right.
You expected it to be this polished game where we're all going to get into character and play. And if you come into that same game with the mindset of like, hey, we got some new players, it's not going to be polished D&D, it's going to be a little more slapstick, but we're going to, get to experience D&D again through the eyes of a new player, and like we're going to get to really pour this hobby that we really enjoy into somebody else and see them like grow attached to it and grow attached to their character and get into the world and grow into that over time. Like that's so fun to start a campaign with that mindset of like, we're playing with new players and we know that they're going to be, slow, not know what to do. We might have to do less combats just because like it's going to take a while for that to sink in, but your role play might be a little weird because they don't know how to talk in character or don't want to do that. Not that you have to do that for role play's sake, but a lot of veteran players do. And, like that type of stuff isn't going to be a part of your game. But when you have that expectation from the outset, it can be just as fun of a game. You get as much out of it as playing in some of those veteran games. And I think that when you have the expectation coming into it, that identifying what your expectation is on the outset so that you can cater it to the actual game you're playing, talking to your DM, talking to the other players, learning who's going to be playing with you, learning what their expectations for this game are so that you can mold yourself into that beforehand. And it's okay to have your own preferences too. Like, I'm not saying that your preference should always be just a chameleon of whatever other people's preferences for this game are. But I will say the more that your expectations can be in line with the other people at the table, the more fun everybody will have from the outset, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So,
This is an idea that is broader than D&D, and I think if it helps to think about it in other terms as well. Like I know for me, I love volleyball, and there is a big difference between playing with a team that you have been playing with, you all have positions, you know where you're playing, you know what you're doing, and going and playing pickup in a random gym, and everyone's just sort of there to have fun, or half the people have never played the sport before. This is true of like almost any game. If you are going there to just have fun and people are just learning, people are just doing things, that can be a very fun environment, but it's very different from what you can expect or what you are looking for if you are a skilled player and you're looking for something very different. Those two environments can feel very different. And it's not wrong for me to want to play the more advanced, the team version of the sport. It's just different. And both of those are okay. And I think part of what we're getting at is trying to set those expectations and figure that out. I think it's important to understand, like, when we're talking about how do you identify what type of D&D or what type of TTRPG you're trying to play, it's important to understand, well, what are the types that I could be trying to play? What am I trying to play? Like, I don't even know. What do you mean by types? It's just it's a game, right? I think there's a big difference between playing a board game and working on a collaborative project together. I think is really one of the bigger categories or buckets that you could put the types of games into for me. I've played with a lot of people who or I have a lot of friends that we meet up on like we'll meet up on a day of the week and it's like, it's board game night, let's play this game, or we'll do these types of things. And that's a very common concept of like, we're gonna get together to play a board game. And a lot of people play D&D very similar to that. Like Tuesday nights, that's D&D night, that's board game night. We get together and we're looking to play a game. Sometimes we might switch up what we're playing because we're looking for some variety. This is a time that I'm like getting together with my friends. We're just like trying to play a game, have some fun. It's something to do. It's an activity. And I think
I think
Mhm.
some hallmarks of that too is specifically one shots
Right.
really lean
Mm.
themselves
Yeah.
into board game-esque play,
Yeah.
where it's like a completed story. But then also like the just really casual, what we'd sometimes call beer and pretzels D&D,
Right.
where it's almost more about the snacks and the friends that you have at the table. It's a lot more joke oriented, and you're killing monsters and having fun. The plot of the story is take it or leave it, like whether all of these episodes are connected and sessions are connected. It's like, yeah, whether your character is fleshed out and three-dimensional, like I'm here to kill some monsters, have some fun, maybe have a sweet moment at the table. Sorry to hop in there, but I was like, I feel like some concrete examples there of this,
Oh
like,
yeah.
very kind of short and snappy style of D&D. Your sessions aren't going to run really long, and you're probably not going to have a ton of emotionally impactful scenes from the sense of your characters, but you're still going to have a lot of fun and laugh and joke, and it's you hanging out with your friends, and D&D is the medium for that you
For
know
sure. And it actually usually takes a lot less from the players if you're
hmm
playing it in that style of D&D.
yeah.
There's not a lot of homework. You're really not thinking about your character or the game in between sessions. You kind of just show up and be like, "Okay, what are we playing? What's my character again? Oh yeah, I'm playing this guy." And then we're going to jump into it. And it's like, "What do you know about your character?" He has a silly voice. He likes to hit things. That's about it. That's
Yeah,
my character.
yeah.
Like, and the DM will prep monsters for you. That's kind of what you're
hmm
doing. And that is
yeah,
super
one
fun.
plot hook and monsters. You got a
Yep, we
MacGuffin to
got it.
go after and a bunch of monsters.
A
So
an orc took the girl and you have to go save her. That's what we're doing.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, there is also, I think that also lends itself to um, recognizing like the time that you're playing. Like if you're just doing a 2 hour D&D session, you're
Yeah.
probably not getting a whole, like you're not investing as much time into it. So therefore there's not as much to develop, right? I like to
Yep.
think about it like, and this really has just helped me both as a DM and a player. But if you think of every single session that you play as an episode in a television series or something like that,
Yep.
you only have so much time, right, in that episode. And if you decided every episode of your television series that you were going to invest 3.5 hours into dialogue between two characters at the table, and there's six of you, that's a problem, right? Because then four
Yeah.
players are completely being left out. And so there is a place where you kind of just have to recognize, like, hey, we play, once a week, once a month, twice a month. And, if we play 6 hours a session, okay, great. That means that I have probably 2, 3, 4 hours for combat and 2, 3, 4 hours for role playing, and you kind of have to find how you shuffle those in. Whereas if I'm doing once a week 4 hour one shot, awesome. Again, don't really have time to jump into my character development as much as, hey, we got to get all this done. We got to figure out what our MacGuffin is, how we're going to get our MacGuffin, and then go and get it. Um, and
Mhm.
so, yeah, I think there's a place where um, the type of D&D that you might be trying to play, make sure that it lines up with how frequently or what kind of D&D you are playing. Of like,
hmm
oh, I really want this grand epic tale. That's awesome. I can only play once a month for an hour and a half. Probably not going to be able to get that from.
yeah. I also wanted to say here too. I think another hallmark of the beer and pretzels type of D&D, the really casual game, is you don't meet super regularly.
Mm.
Yeah.
It either is irregular intervals or really far in between intervals, and part of the reason for that is exactly what Josiah was saying earlier. When you want to have a really constant story or something like that, people forget their characters or their motivations. It's like coming back, acting part of a play out, and then coming back in like very little context, saying, all right, pick up where you left off and continue acting in this play that you're writing and acting in at the same time. And
Yeah.
it's like, I don't remember what happened in the last scene. What do you mean continue doing this? And so it can be really hard to have that serious type of game when you are meeting with super long intervals in between or just really sporadically. And I think that lends itself to, you don't need a whole lot to play this game, but if you're going to like really get into character, you're going to need a lot more. And so that idea of like, oh, it's really easy. And on the other side of this, I do, before we depart from this topic, want to say, what does the other side look like?
Right.
Because I would define it, you have your beer and pretzels over here. And on the other side of the spectrum, there's kind of two camps of more of the veteran play. There's the really, really story-oriented camp and the really, really mechanic-oriented camp.
Right. Yeah.
And then there's a spectrum in between those two. And that might be a little reductive, but I think it's helpful for visualizing this.
But thankfully, we're doing a podcast, so we get to be reductive to help really drive home our point. So thank you, listeners.
That's a good
visuals, so we're going to try to give you a visual audially.
Exactly.
Exactly. So you have these kind of two camps, and in the first, the storytellers, I think in a somewhat rude sense, they're sometimes referred to as the drama kids. I feel fine saying that. I know most of us have done drama, and some of us for over a decade. So like it's a bit of the drama kids, and they're really want to get into acting and get into character and do voices and the role play and maybe the political intrigue and the romances and like they just love the stories that are being told in D&D. And then there's the mechanics side of things, and that often is where you get your munchkins, is often maybe not the nicest term for them, or the optimizers. Again, I feel fine using these terms, min-maxers, because I very much fall into this camp at times. And it's the people who view like taking this board game to the nth degree, saying, wow, there's all this complexity, I want to learn it and I want to grasp it, and I want to I remember there's this YouTuber who really likes optimization, and he was talking about some of his tables. And in D&D, you kind of have this like deadly marker of like, oh, this is what a deadly encounter looks like. And he's talking about it, and he goes, have you ever played an encounter where you're fighting against 27 times deadly? The encounter, like, taking the deadly encounter and multiplying it by 27. He's like, and then handling that as a party. He's like, you feel like a freaking SWAT team as you're going in and like doing all this stuff. And it's like, that is a form of like veteran play. And you kind of, there are definitely people who marry the two. And I think we strive to marry the two because we really enjoy both aspects of the game. We're not like, oh, mechanics don't matter at all. No, there are a lot of what help us to ground ourselves in this game. But we also are like, oh man, storytelling doesn't matter at all. It's all about, the board game aspect of it. It's like, no, we love the story. It's what gives it meaning. It's what gets us really into the game.
Yeah.
But that kind of goes to prove our point of, we've built these expectations over years of playing the game of like, oh, we really like this mix. We really like how this and this comes together, and we've talked about it. And I might lean a little bit more on the mechanics side at times, and Elijah might lean a little bit more on the role play. That's stereotypes. I think we flip-flop back and forth at times, but like there is this place where like we push and we pull, and we maybe have things we enjoy more about the game than others. And so it really, especially as you get more into the game, those expectations become more and more important, that you guys are defining what kind of game you want to be running and playing.
Right. And I think as we talk about this even more, like the big piece I think that comes out for me is really, it's a collaborative effort between everybody. Like whereas the beer and pretzels, you just sort of show up and you're playing a game. I really think this second bucket of like these more veteran players, it's like we're all working together to either create a great story or win the game. Like it really fits into like one of these two. Like we're all working together to like we're going to beat this monster. How can we do it the best way? How can I work my character off of your character? And we're going to like combo different moves to beat the best monster. We're going to take on that 27 time deadly thing. And we're going to win this combat. Or it's like, okay, how can my character have interacted with your character in the past? And how can our backgrounds work together? And how can you motivate my character for a character arc? And we're going to have growth. And like that's another way that we're like working together. And I think that really is one of the biggest pieces of like separation between these two types of gameplays. It's like we're all working together for this like shared goal of whatever the type of D&D we're trying to play is. And I think that really is one of the bigger separators. And again, neither are wrong. They're just different styles. And you'll get that at different tables.
Yeah. I also do want to say, like, you don't have to be a veteran player, someone who's played a lot of D&D to like know what you like. This is again, the original question is, what type of D&D are you trying to play? Right? Just because you're trying to play something doesn't mean that you'll succeed, which I think is something that I have found a lot as I've grown as a player and as a DM of like, yeah, I'm trying to tell this great epic story. And I get to the table and I'm like, I don't think that the characters that my party is playing have really lent itself to this. So I'm going to still try to play this, but also like, I can kind of let go of X, Y, and Z. And even like as a new player, you probably are playing D&D because you watched Dimension 20 or watched Critical Role or heard about it from a friend and you were like, oh, that aspect that they told you about really sounds interesting. I would love to do that. Right. And whatever that is, you may jump in and love the mechanics and be like, this is so fun to actually have all of these options and all of these different things that I can do. That is totally valid and totally real, right? Like new players are not like, oh, I don't know what I want to try to do at all. You probably were interested in D&D for some reason, right? And so we're just we definitely just don't want to like say, oh, only veterans know what they want to what type of D&D they're trying to play. And so I think that kind of leads into the next question that I am going to ask about though is how did different experience levels of players, we're not talking like, oh yeah, I'm a level 5 fighter, how do different experienced players kind of impact the D&D that you're playing or the type of D&D that you're playing, and really just impact the game itself, especially when we're talking about different types of D&D.
Yeah. I think I have a pretty unique perspective on this, because the first game I ever ran, I had never played D&D, and I'm DMing, and 4 of my 6 players had never played D&D.
I was newish.
Josiah had played like a few times in high school, and one of my other players was a little bit more of a serious player, but he was like really he wanted to be super respectful, so he did not like share any like, oh, you're doing this wrong or do this differently. He just went with the flow of anything that was done. So effectively I was playing with people who just never played D&D before. We didn't know what it was totally supposed to look like. I did not cut my teeth on Critical Role or Dimension 20. I oddly enough found Acquisitions Incorporated first.
Nice.
And saw Chris Perkins playing when I was like 13, and I was like, this is so cool. And watched a bunch of their stuff and really was like, I want to do D&D at some point, and couldn't find a group until college. And so that was my like first experience. But then right now I am now a fairly veteran player and playing with a group of all new players, my wife and 2 of our friends, and then Elijah, who's a very veteran player, is also a part of this table. And it has just been really interesting to see some of the differences between like kind of having all new players and being a new player myself, and all new players, but being a veteran player and having a veteran player at the table. And one of the things I really wanted to start off by pointing out was like one of the beauties, oddly enough, of being all new players is the lack of expectations. Like
Yeah.
there is this place
Mhm.
where it's like, yeah, maybe you've watched one or two things and you're like, I know it's supposed to look a little bit like that, but I have no idea how they're actually doing that. And so we're just going to give it a shot. And in a lot of ways, it really removes some of the shackles that you sometimes feel towards the rules and towards like the commonalities of how you would play this game and how others play this game. And this is not the right way, but the more optimal ways to play it. And you're kind of like, look, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to try to run the game and see how it goes. Um, and I think that can be a really fun experience if leaned into. And honestly, the person I'm most impressed with at that table, that first table, was not me for running this without having seen it, or any of the new players for trusting that. It was the one guy who had played a lot. Because he's
Wow.
just like, sure, I'm going to go along with it. Yeah, you can run it however you want. That's not how the rules work, but I don't care. Like I'm going to have fun and play with this group, and it's going to be a good time.
Mm.
And I think that's really, yeah, it's interesting to see that. And where I'm at currently now with this other table, I would say the one thing I'd want to point out about that is how helpful it is to have a veteran player at the table. Especially wherever you're at in your experience as a DM, having somebody at the table that feels comfortable. And like I remember trying to kind of get all the new players to role play in the way that I thought it was supposed to kind of look like, versus having Elijah at the table here, and he's like literally giving soft hooks into all of the other players of like, hey, I'm going to ask you this question in character, and it's not coming from the DM, it's coming from your fellow player, another character that's in this journey alongside you. And you're going to have to kind of think of an answer and maybe respond in character or, thereof. And like having that as a little bit of a like, it's not all on me. Like I have somebody else that's not DMing. I have that role. I'm doing the prep. I'm doing all this other stuff, but who has the experience and comfortability of playing with new players of like, how can I not overdo it, but hook you into this game and into this scenario? And that is so helpful. I think I may have lost the thread there a little bit.
I got you. I'll pull us back.
Pull us back.
Great.
Yeah. I think when we talk about different experience levels in players, for me, I think it does change the dynamic at different players or at different tables based on what type of players you have. But I think I would almost define experienced players a little differently. And I think we understand what it is, and I think we're using it the way. But I want to make it clear: I don't think an experienced player, or a better player, a veteran player, is just someone who understands like the mechanics or like understands how the game runs. Like that to me is not what drastically changes how you function at the table. To me, an experienced player or a veteran player is someone who understands like how they need to interact with other players in order to get the group moving forward. It's an understanding of how a party works or like how they need to interact with the DM or like how these things. And like when you have like as a DM, when you have experienced players at your table, it takes a lot of the weight off, like Jack was saying, because you don't have to do everything for your players. You're like at least one other person at your table, if you have an experienced player or a veteran player at that table, is trying to move your party forward. It knows what your other players are looking for or need and is going to be doing some of that soft hooks that Jack was talking about of like is moving us forward. Is like, hey, we could do this. This might help us get in the right direction. And I think that like that does change your table dramatically. And if all of your players are doing that, then as a DM, your job becomes a lot less. Like if you have a full table of experienced players, as a DM, your job can become less of I need to I need to motivate all of my players. I need to get everybody going this way. You can kind of just lay out the landscape in front of them and just sort of adjust and correct as they move forward because they understand where they're going and what they're trying to do, and you can kind of help direct that instead of necessarily pulling them to specific places and different things. And it does change the game, I think, dramatically as you do that. When you're playing with new players, especially if you have all new players, um, I think as a DM again, it takes a little bit more effort to get them going in the right direction. Um, and you have to uh, be patient and be understanding, be willing to take a little bit more to say, oh, like here's what we're doing, and as a reminder, this is what this does. Here's how this functions. This character is saying this, which means your options are sometimes just taking out removing some of the expectations that all of your players are going to know the mechanics, or removing even the sometimes it's not even mechanics. We just have our NPCs say things and you're like, "Oh, you should know that this means you should go over there and talk to that person." Or you should know this probably means that there's a monster in that room. It's like, no, those characters don't know that that means that. Like that isn't necessarily always clear. Sometimes similar to relationships, speaking between the lines is not going to be super helpful for newer players. Sometimes just giving them all of the information can be very helpful and help them move along. The other thing that I want to say is, as players, or if you are a new player, something that I want to encourage you is, you do not have to you do not have to always know what you're doing. You are not recording a live D&D session and you have to role play everything that you say. You have to know exactly what you're doing next. One of the most helpful things you can do is say, okay, so what are we doing next? What are we trying to do? Where are we going? What should I do in this scenario? How can I be the most effective? Asking those questions to your DM, to your other players, can be incredibly helpful. And DMs, feel free to ask questions to your players as well, especially if you have new players. Hey, what are you trying to do? Do you know everything that you can do? Do you feel like you understand how your player acts in combat? Do you feel like you understand your backstory well? Do you know what you're supposed to be doing here? Or asking some of those questions, you can always stop and do that. This is not a game. This is not a show where you can't say lines. You can take a break. You can take a pause. You're able to keep going. You can definitely step out of that. And I think that helps everything move smoother.
Yeah.
I think I have found, at least when I'm DMing, I think the difference between really experienced players and new players is how much description I give. And it's really interesting because when I have, experienced players, I can kind of describe things very differently, right? And so I'll kind of just do this as an example of cool, if you're an experienced player, you will be able to tell me what monster the party is about to fight based on the descriptions that I give. Of you see a room full of bodies, and there are only a bunch of crates about. You don't see any sort of monsters or anything at all. And as you kind of step into the room, you see a pair of eyes sort of pop out from the monster, or from the crates itself. And all of my experienced players are like, "Oh, great, it's mimics," right? And everyone's now "Okay, is this an no?" They no longer trust any object.
Right.
You describe that to a new player, and they're like, "Oh, cool. There's this creature that it can mimic any other object," and they don't think about oh yeah, now the next room we go into, I'm going to immediately go up and smack the crate because they don't know that. And so my description there changes, and it's like you you this horror like overcomes you as you realize that these monsters can turn into any object, that changes then how you play. And that comes a lot
Mm.
of times as well with, again, like Josiah was saying, asking your players like, hey, what do you want to do in this situation? Whereas it's like, hey, I kind of expect that Jack and Josiah are just going to say, can I make a perception check or a nature check? Or, they're going to ask me verbatim, can I make this check? And I'm like, yeah, sure, go ahead and make this check. That's fine. Whereas with a newer set of players, I will be like, you see this, go ahead and make me this check to see how
Yeah.
much you know about this thing. And those and I think that changes the dynamics, but it doesn't necessarily have to change how the game is played, but it definitely changes the impact of like, okay, I have a lot more description that I'm going to give to a new party about what exactly they're seeing, how exactly this impacts the world, and this impacts the story. What does this mean? Whereas a veteran party that's played a lot of D&D, that has come across a lot of different things, I don't really have to tell you what it is. You're just going to be like, "Oh, great, it's liches again. That's a dragon." You know,
Mhm.
I think
Can
I
I
was saying
can I
like,
say too on to that specifically, like new players may not know how to react to those monsters. If I,
yeah,
as a new, as a veteran player, walk into a room and you say, "Oh, there's a lich in here," or "Oh, there's a dragon in here,"
right,
I have an internal sense of like, I might this might be you saying, "Hey, you should book it out of this room." Whereas a new player says, "Oh, the DM won't throw something at me that's going to kill me," like, "Oh, he's got a
yeah.
plan for this. This is a power fantasy, and I just win every fight I take," and it's like,
The whole campaign actually takes part with your soul in a phylactery. But yes, I do have a plan for this.
and so there is that place where like that is something that you can have those expectations on veteran players and maybe not on new players. Sorry, I thought that was a little pertinent to what you're saying. I interrupted you there though. So
No, you're fine. Um, it yeah, I think, but one of the big things that I will say is like, I love playing D&D with both experienced and new players. Both bring something to the table that is very unique. And I think that it can be hard to play with both. Like, on the one hand, you can play really loose with the rules with new players, but sometimes you
Mhm.
have to play really tight with the rules with experienced players because they're like, you can't do that because you took two reactions this turn. And it's like, you are so right. I did take two reactions this turn. I forgot it. Whereas a new player is like, whoa, this monster is super powerful. That's crazy. You know?
Mhm.
Um, and so that, I think that also can bring its own challenges. And it also brings its challenges as, as a player that has a lot of experience. It can be kind of frustrating when the DM's like, they're a new player. It's fine. They can do that. That's great. And it's like, um, you just gave them an ability that will pretty much allow them to make 4 attacks every round. That's not fair at all. I should be, if I was able to do that, I could just floor wipe everyone. And it's like, well, yeah, but that's why you're not allowed to do that, because you can do that in 2 levels. And I don't feel
Uh,
bad giving this extra thing to my new player because they were creative and they did that. And so there's a place where you kind of have to, I think as I've grown as a DM and a player, I kind of accept that it's like, cool, I get a little less now because I know more about D&D. And that doesn't have to be true at every table. But I think I have learned that that is kind of a little bit better. Like I had a conversation with a professor from school, and he's a theater professor, and he kind of told me this really smart thing my senior year of college. He said, I learned uh, when I was on stage that sometimes the best roles are the roles that make everyone else look really, really good. And I was like,
Mhm.
that is really, really fun. And I love doing that in D&D, is like taking on the role that makes all of the players look a little bit better. Um, Taking the alert feat so that you can go later in combat, and the people that don't roll as well can go first in combat and like jump into the action. Awesome. Or sometimes saying, hey, I'm actually going to swap turns with you so that I can cast haste on you so you can get an extra action. However you decide to do that, it can be super, super fun. Um, I I think that there is a just a place where when you have different levels of experience, it naturally changes how you play the game. And that I think is a really good thing. Um, Anything more to say before we move on? I don't want to cut anybody else off.
Oh, no, I think that that pretty much
Yeah.
covers it there. Yeah, I
Cool.
agree.
So I guess then the last one is a little bit, we're gonna kind of dive into, I guess, the more personal aspect of D&D, and your opinions on D&D. I originally wrote this as like, what is a successful session or a good session of D&D for
Mm,
you? But
Hmm.
like,
yeah.
even boiling that down of like, what makes D&D fun? What is the type of D&D that you're like, this is what I want to play, and even if I don't get this, it's still fun when I do this. Like, what makes
Hmm.
D&D enjoyable for you?
Yeah, I think not curating it to, oh, this whole thing has to happen. But I
Right.
like these individual things. And I think that honestly, it took me a long time to learn that. Instead of saying, this is what D&D has to look like. And it's got to have all of these things in it. And if it doesn't, I'm not, my expectations are shattered and I'm not having fun. But saying, hey, I enjoy this aspect, and that. And if one of those is present, I can really enjoy this. And I think for me, one of the first things that I would definitely say is I love collaborative storytelling with friends. Like, holy cow, that's so much fun. And
Yeah.
that's part of the reason, like, I love TTRPGs, not just D&D, because like that is something that is true across the board for all of these games is you are taking you are essentially doing an improv scenario with your friends, that is curated by a setting and a guide, often a rule book, um, and often is oriented around random chance. So nobody is fully in control of this, which takes it from just creating a story with friends to almost being this experience that you guys are having together, where you get to step away from your world and step into other people's or other people's shoes, other characters' shoes, and have
Mm,
this game that you play together, this experience, this story that you create together. And it is such a fun, yeah. I That truly is what captured my imagination and heart when I first started playing this game. It was like, holy cow, this is so cool. Um, that is the thing that I feel like I'm chasing more often than not in D&D, because it's not something, Elijah pointed this out earlier. It's not always something that you can just choose to have. Like to go from this moment of, oh, we're sitting around playing a board game, to, oh wow, we're experiencing this world together, and these characters have come alive. And I mean, we talk about this when reading books of like, oh, that was a good book, versus like that was like it jumped off the page, it came alive to me. I could see and feel and taste and touch all of this world around me. And those books that capture that for us are really special often for us.
mm,
And I think that that's a place in D&D. So I know that is one thing that I absolutely love about this game. Another odd thing is I love the mechanics of D&D. I
mhm.
love being a munchkin. I will pore over books and read every little rule and mechanic, because I'm like, I love the interplay of it. I love to understand why this is effective storytelling thing, because when I feel like I understand the base bones of it, whether as a DM or as a player, I can use it to tell better stories. I can see what this game is good at and what it's not good at, and I can take it and tell better stories with it. And so I love, learning every little aspect of it. And, I love to, build super powerful characters. Sometimes I play them. I've started to do that a little less because I know it's kind of hard on the game sometimes when I play a, Hexblade Warlock that, took the stereotypical polearm master, great weapon master from 2014 and goes ham on everything he's fighting. Yeah. Um, yeah. Sometimes that's not the nicest to your DM. Now, I will say, and we've talked about this, playing with
Forgive
smaller
you.
tables is what often makes that a little bit easier, where it's
Yeah.
like, in that game, it was just me and Josiah's player characters. And so it's a little bit more like the DM's almost like, I want you guys to be a little more powerful, so I'm not scared of killing you in every single fight. Like, it can be kind of nice in that sense. But that being said, I really enjoy the character aspect. And part of the reason I enjoy that is it gives me a way to play D&D by myself, to be a part of this hobby in this game, whether I have my weekly or twice a week games, I can still feel like I'm playing D&D and doing some sort of thing and theory crafting and building mechanics and understanding this game from a developer standpoint. And I love doing that. That's so much fun for me. And it makes its way into the game as I feel like it makes me a better DM. It makes me run more engaging and effective combats when I understand all the mechanics. It helps me to better understand the storytelling that this game is good at and what it incentivizes. Just a tiny little tangent here. I love talking about how the mechanics of the game incentivize the way people role play. And for example, just one small example, D&D has an XP system based on killing monsters. That's not the only way that you could have an XP system.
Yeah.
That incentivizes killing monsters. Part of the reason you don't have combats end very often with people running away is because that's not incentivized by this game. And so questioning, is this the way it should be incentivized? In older editions of D&D, it was finding gold. Every single gold piece equaled 1 XP. And it's like, now you've incentivized finding treasure. That is the, pinnacle thing, because you get all these goodies from doing that. And so you want to find treasure. Milestone is another one people will throw out, which is kind of story beats, and it incentivizes story beats when done well. But I've also seen it just be this nebulous, the DM will give you a level when he feels like it. And it's like, that can be hard because then it's taking away any incentive. So those type of things. I love thinking about the mechanics of D&D and the developer side of it and the player side of it and how all these things, interplay together.
Yeah, that wasn't a dog on Milestone. That was him saying,
if done well, it's really good. It incentivizes storytelling, which is awesome. But if done poorly, it can be kind of hard at times too. I'll pause there because I have other things I like, but I think those two are the big ones.
I think, man, we have talked so much about what makes D&D fun for us. I think every time that we go to start a new campaign, we're like, okay, what do we want out of D&D? What are we looking for this campaign? Because we've started many times and been like, well, I'm not really sure what I want. This didn't really land super well. I'm not really feeling this one. You know what I mean? And so we continually come back to, well, okay, well, as we start this next one, what do you guys actually want to play? What are we trying to get out of this? And so, man, this question keeps coming back, and it is difficult one for me to answer because, man, it just feels like it changes, and that's what I was going to say too. I think it is okay for what makes this game fun for you. It's okay for that to change, and it will change sometimes. There are times when what I want out of D&D is I want a really lighthearted, fun thing. I've got a lot going on in my life right now. I cannot handle a dark setting where tragedy keeps happening. All of everything that I love keeps getting ripped away from me. Yeah, I can't handle that right now. It's not what I'm looking for. This is just like doubling down on my emotional insecurities anyways. So let's play something different than that. Sometimes what I want is to just go kill a bunch of monsters. That's just a fun thing. Like, I just want to go and do that. Other times, what I really love, I know for me, similar to Jack, is I do love the storytelling. I love world building. I want to know what is going on everywhere. Give me the political rundown. Who's doing what? I want to know, like, give me the Entertainment Weekly magazine from this world, because I want to know what what are the nobles wearing? I want to know, like, all of the little details, because
He
to
wants to
me
know
that is
specifically exactly what we're eating, what it tastes like. The number of times Josiah has asked me, "What is on the menu specifically?"
yeah. What can I eat? What's the regular cuisine around these parts? What are they selling? Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh man. Yeah, I love, I mean, I've talked about this before, but I love congruency or consistency. I want things to be consistent across the board. That is like super meaningful to me. So I want to know, like, how is this whole world set up, and how can I, like, have my character be a part of it? Because for me, one of the most real things, one of the most fun parts of D&D for me is feeling like I get to create something, I get to build something, and it's real, and it's like it's an actual, like, thing that I get to be a part of. And building a create like building a character that exists in a world that only I get to control is super fun for me. So I love that aspect of it. And similar, actually, to the way that Jack gets to play D&D outside of D&D by creating characters and optimizing and like digging into the mechanics. I've actually been having a lot of fun building a world. I'm working on like a setting and like a setting guide. And it's so fun to create this world and like flesh it out, and what is going on with all of the characters and what is happening on all of these different things. And that has just been super fun for me. So I have been really enjoying that aspect of it. And I will say there are definitely times when I do enjoy just the, like, beer and pretzels one shot. I've really enjoyed running one shots. That has been super fun to be like, no stress. I'm walking in, no prep. Here we go. I'm running it. This is what we're doing. That has been super fun for me. And yeah, there are just different aspects of things that I don't know that I would have uh, as much fun doing some of the other things all of the time. And sometimes they do just change. I don't always want to run a one shot every week, but that is a fun thing sometimes. So I don't know. There's a lot of different aspects to it. The one thing that I'll add to this is, whatever you're trying to get out of the game, whatever is making it fun for you, that should be, as a player or as a DM, that should really, like, be the thing that is running through your head the whole time. Like, as you every like major decision that you're making, not necessarily as a player, but like, hey, we want to take the campaign in this direction. Like, who are the players I want to play with? What are we doing? Like, what world do we want to play in? Like, when are we going to play? How, like, all of those things, all of those major decisions, I think if you are constantly thinking, "Oh, I'm trying to build a story here," that's going to affect everything. How you build your character is going to be affected by that. How you interact with other players is going to be affected by that. Like, if I care about storytelling, I'm going to build a background that that is going to, like, lend itself to that. Playing a character that's super antisocial is not super helpful for building a campaign, for building a story. It can be difficult, actually, to interact with other players. If I'm a super secretive, non-talkative person who sticks to himself. is a social recluse and I live out in the woods. My only desire is to get back home to my comfort. Let me tell you, that is a difficult character for anyone to interact with. That is a struggle to build any sort of story. At all times, I'm trying to leave. It's like, here's a story hook. Yeah, I don't want to do that. I want to go home. Okay, well, I guess we'll figure something out. And so, like, when I know all of this, I'm going to try to adjust and try to move towards that goal.
Yeah. I think the thing that I've found I most enjoy about D&D is very obviously storytelling. It is I love telling stories, but I find myself DMing more often than I'm a player. And I'm really excited because I am getting to play in a new campaign that Jack is running, and it's been a lot of fun already. I think we've played
Yeah.
2 sessions. The party has played 2 sessions.
You
I
were
had to
gone
miss.
for the first one.
Yeah. So I've gotten to play 1 session. I was like, this is super fun. But what I love actually, and I've really just found super awesome about D&D, is building villains that are rewarding to defeat. And that, like, to build a villain that it's like, if I, it's one thing to be like, oh well, we slay the dragon and dragons are bad. Okay, great. But to be able to say, like, oh, I killed a villain who, like, his goal was to harm innocent people, or his goal was to extort, whoever. There is so much fun for me in, like, giving my player something that it's like, I'm so glad that they're dead. To have to build hateable villains is actually a really fun thing for me. And it's something that I have just, like, really gotten into as a DM. Um, and it's something that makes better stories. It's like, hey, not only do I not like this guy, it's good that he's dead. You know, and so I think that's probably become one of my favorite things. Obviously, that's changed over time. I definitely used to just my favorite thing about Dungeons and Dragons was the fact that there were dungeons and dragons, and I was just thrilled to be playing. Um, but over time, it's become the stories that you can tell, and just how people interpret, like, storytelling is really fun. Of If I say, "Hey, we're gonna tell an epic," um, that changes how everyone jumps into the story, and it's very fun because of what people want to get out of an epic and how the backstories that they give themselves to fit into this, which is just really I enjoy people watching, and that's kind of I get to do that a little bit as a DM when I'm like, okay, here's your premise, and then everyone goes, oh, and that means I'm going to react this way. Um, so before we end, I do want to just kind of wrap up by saying something kind of important, like the right way to play Dungeons and Dragons does not exist, right? We are not saying, hey, this is how you have to play. This way is better than this way. Like, we are not gatekeeping this and saying that we have it right. Obviously, you've heard us say before, we don't claim to have all of the answers. This is just what we like to do, right? But what we do want to say is, like, there's a healthy and realistic place where you have the right to expect something from a D&D game. And we want you to be able to do that. And if you're playing a D&D game and it doesn't align with, what you're wanting from the game, or everyone else is having a really bad time and you're having a good time, like, there's a place where you really should communicate and say, hey, this is what I want out of D&D. This is what is a good spot for me. And you can, and also if you have to, like, you can walk away from that table. That is totally okay. I promise you, there are a ton of other people out there that do want to play D&D. I'll say your way, and that I am lucky enough to have my 2 best friends want to play D&D the way I want to play it. That's really fun, and so I hope that you guys also can find that your friends want to play D&D and do the storytelling or the number crunching that you want to do as well. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you for listening. And if you stuck with it this far, we greatly appreciate you. With that said, this has been Tales About the Table, and we will see you next time.
Bye.